Hi, Patrick Clark here. I'm with Brian Friend. Brian, how are you feeling today?
Pretty good. Semifinals test complete for me, and getting ready to watch the athletes do them this week in Orlando.
And that's actually why we're here talking. We're going to talk about those workouts. How's your body feel after doing, I guess, 7 workouts across 3 days?
I think the body held up kind of better than I thought. I wouldn't say that I trained for this or was specifically preparing for like that many, you know, density of tests in that short of a time period. It was kind of a last minute decision. I do like to test the workouts when I'm going to cover them, and in this case, be covering them for 3 weeks. So I think it gives me a little bit different perspective, and to have the opportunity to do it kind of in the order and over the amount of time that they'll actually be doing the tests. I just kind of thought, why not? Because because some of the tests, if you just do them on a day at the gym, or if you're well rested and you go and do them, you may do very well and your scores may hold up. But when you do them after the other things that come before them, I think there's a reason behind that. I think especially with Adrian programming, that he's a little bit clever and thoughtful in that regard, and so I wanted to kind of experience that for myself.
So this isn't the first time that you've actually done the workouts to see the stimulus or to put yourself what the athletes are going through. When did you start doing that?
I've done it in different capacities, I would say, over the years. Sometimes if I work with a competition and I actually have the workouts ahead of time or have an opportunity to talk to the programmer, I'll do the workouts to give feedback prior to the competition, which is a little different. You're not necessarily doing all of them or doing them all back to back to back, but you do get to have a little bit of a impact or a conversation about why was this program this way, or especially when it comes to floor layout and ease of kind of following the workout. It's rare that I would do the whole competition, because, but it's also rare that the athletes will be taking the same test 3 consecutive weekends. So this is probably the first time that I've really done it this way, where I've had a chance to do all the workouts in order over the same amount of time that they'll do them. So in that regard, it's kind of new.
Yeah. So how would you use that? How are you using that to determine your analysis or your rankings or even your predictions? I mean, this you said this is one of the first times you've actually done that, but I mean, what was the intent in that?
Well, in general, just doing CrossFit workouts for a decade, I know that sometimes you look at a workout and you think you know what it's going to feel like or where the sticking point's going to be, and then you go and do the workout and you realize, even if you weren't that far off, that maybe there's a little bit more to it than you thought at first. And in particular, when you're talking about evaluating a very competitive field of athletes with a lot on the line, kind of understanding where those nuanced things are, whether it's within one workout or the entirety of the competition, I think can kind of, for me at least, it can kind of pinpoint into, okay, what athletes might excel at this kind of junction that's tough,
Mm-hmm.
compared to some athletes that may struggle in that same spot of the workout, or workout over the course of the weekend.
Did you find it challenging? Obviously, not all the information was put out about the workouts, so you had to. I guess there's a lot of guesswork, and plus you're kind of limited because obviously you're not doing this at one of these semifinals where you have more room. You don't know the layouts, but you're doing it at a local affiliate, local to you in the Chicago area. I mean, what are some of the challenges when it comes to something like that?
I think just getting the mindset right. Like, I was really searching for the stimulus that the athletes will most likely feel. So obviously there's certain cases where I can't do the weight or the volume or the skill of whatever they're going to be required to do. And so within the parameters of what I knew about the workouts, what was available to me, and what my limitations are physically, I tried to kind of come up with a version of the workout where I would be in the expected time domain, or do do the expected volume of work. And I think that in most cases I was successful in that regard.
So let's start with day one. You did obviously workout 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find out? Let's start with workout 1. What did you gain from that? What type of stimulus were you looking for in that?
I mean, it's the longest workout of the weekend, and it's the first workout of the weekend. And athletes will be well prepared, well tapered, well rested coming into this. And you start off right off the back with this 3,000 meter echo bike, and I think that you'll see some athletes fall into a little bit of a trap there in terms of hitting that too hard. For me, at least, It's the back half of the run and everything after that where this workout is really kind of picks up steam. So you get to that runner and you realize you're going to be on it for 7.5 to 10 minutes depending on how good of a runner you are and how much can you push knowing what's still to come. I think that the sled pulls that they have to do are going to be variable. There's some people that crush those, some people that's going to just be kind of a hindrance to their overall performance in the workout. But if you can manage them well, the back half of the run and the back half of the ski are where decisions have to be made.
What about workout number 2? I mean, how long of a break did you take between 1 and 2?
Well, this is something that I didn't have unlimited time to simulate the rest between workouts. So I basically did, I would do one test and then 30 minutes later I would do the other each day. So I took about a 30-minute break. And this test too is it's a high skill gymnastics test. Obviously they're going to be doing it with some weight on their back in the form of the ruck, but for me it was just a matter of, can I even do this skill of ring complex? Found out I could, and then I tried to approximate what I think the realistic time domain remaining in each working interval would be for the athletes, and I picked a number of ring complexes and pistols, which I'm very slow at, that I could do in that time. So I had between 75 and 85 seconds for burpee box get overs each round, and I was able to get 12, 12, and 15. So I think that's somewhat similar to what the athletes will experience. I think for the people that can handle the ruck and the skills well here, that capacity-wise, they'll be able to push. So I think you might see that uptick in the last round, knowing that there's nothing coming in after it, and you can just kind of sell out at the end of day number 1.
Yeah, we talked about workout number 2, and one of the unknown variables is obviously the ruck. You obviously didn't wear a ruck, or did you wear a vest or anything like that, or just go body weight?
Body weight.
Okay. So obviously the athletes are doing this. They're well versed in, if
they're much better than me.
I didn't want to say it. Those are your words. But most of them are used to working out, doing movements like this with the vest, or recently, some of them, we've seen at Wadapalooza in the past where they've done ring muscle ups with the ruck on. How much of a difference do you think that ruck's going to make for these athletes?
I think what I did compared to what they'll do from a relatively difficulty standpoint is fine. It's comparable. I think that having that weight displaced on your back is going to be a little different for each athlete. And you've had a chance to talk to some athletes who've done it before. Just because you're good at ring muscle-ups doesn't guarantee that you'll be good with the ruck on. I think it really favors the strong puller more than anything else, with that weight kind of holding you back, and you might have to adjust the angle of a kind of uprise. Instead of letting the hips come up as high, it might be a little bit more vertical. So I think the stronger pullers in the field gain a little bit of an advantage from having the ruck. But for the athletes that are really competitive to go to the games, I still think that I think the ruck will have some impact going forward to the next 2 days in the way that the body feels. But I think within the context of that workout, it's still kind of a range of motion and capacity test.
All right, so you go home, rest 24 hours, hopefully 24 hours. Got a good night's sleep. You got some food in you. Day 2. Let's talk about day 2.
Yeah, it starts with Linda. I was probably looking forward to that the least, but part of that's just because I've done it the most. I've done that workout before, not with the dumbbell barbell combination. I've done each individually. So I was like, Linda, it's Linda. I know it's not that fun to do it. It's a challenging workout any way you slice it. But I got through it. I scaled it down to try to hit the time cap. I was like 20 seconds over the time cap, so I was really happy with the weights that I picked. I felt like, just kind of a deliberate pace for me from beginning to end was the way to go. I tried to pick it up a little bit at the end. Obviously, like the rounds of 4, 3, 2, 1. If you're proficient and move the transitions well, you can finish those in like 60 to 90 seconds. But I was starting to this is where I start to ask the questions of how does day 1 impact day 2, and the very obvious is the pecs. If you're been on the rings doing the extra dip, you're pressing off the ground. For the burpee, how's that going to affect the dumbbells? The dumbbells are already heavy, cumbersome, and awkward, and you need both arms to be firing at the same time. So I did feel it in the pecs a little bit. I felt like I really had to stay tight there. And I didn't even do the full volume or with the ruck that those guys did. So I think it'll have a little bit of an effect, but overall, it's just I think for a lot of these guys, it's mostly if you can manage the dumbbells, which is kind of the unknown, then it's just about heart rate management, and for people who cycle barbell well, I think have a huge advantage. Because my heart rate went up on the squat cleans for sure. But if there's athletes that are proficient at that I think that's where the separation is at.
And then now we transition to what my favorite workout is of the weekend, only because I love a good heavy barbell, is 4 and 5. So tell me how you managed that. Did you run outside? I mean, was this something you did on an air runner? I mean, we don't know what the running's going to be
We
like.
do know now.
We do. Okay.
Yeah, they posted the workouts on the game site today, and it is an assault air runner.
There
I
we go.
used an assault air runner not knowing that it was that, just because it was most convenient at the location I was doing the tests. And I finished Linda, and I was like, there's no way. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do a heavy snatch right now. But 30 minutes later, I was feeling a little better and okay, and I warmed up to a weight that I thought would be like a safe opening weight. I did a little like running back and forth just to get the heart rate up, and then tried to snatch it. I felt like it was okay, so then I just kind of went right into it head first. My intent was to to try to get to the barbell with 2 minutes left. So I wanted to have 2 minutes, and the reason I wanted to do that was I think that's what a lot of the athletes will have. By the time they lift their first snatch, it'll be like 2 minutes on the clock counting down. And I wanted to know, changing my own weights, taking a good amount of time to set up how many lifts could I realistically get in. And I was able to do 3. I was successful on all 3. I hit about 90% on my 1 rep max, which is, I think, kind of what's expected.
Yeah.
So I was like really happy with that. And then like basically I was like riding a high off of that snatch into the second part. And I haven't run a ton, but that's like that run at the end of day 2 is, I mean, I think you're going to have to make it hurt. And this is like, it's one of, I would say, like, I think that the end of each day, you have to make that decision. The last round of the burpees, that you have to make it hurt. That last run, you have to make it hurt. And then we'll get to test 7.
Yeah. Well, one thing you mentioned warmed up, and that's something that athletes, obviously, they're going to be able to do in the warm up area. They're going to warm up to, a certain percentage, or who knows. But then they're going to have to sit around in those corrals for a while. Obviously, that's something that you didn't simulate during this. But talk about how that's going to affect the athletes.
Yeah, I mean, I think in most cases, athletes are prepared for that. When you talk about test 4 and 5, though, it's a little different ball game. I mean, going for a 90% snatch when you're tired halfway through a competition and your snatch is 300 pounds to begin with, like that's a lot of weight, and you're in a forced time domain that you feel the pressure of that 6-minute clock, and you've just been standing around for 20 minutes on top of all of that. That doesn't sound that safe to me, quite honestly. Back it up with an 800-meter sprint. I mean, especially on the air runner, like people are going to be going for that. And I don't know if you get off the air runner and then have to run across the competition floor or not, but I'm hopeful they reduce that corral time as much as they physically can to give athletes the best chance to be injury-free through a heavy snatch in a tight time window and a sprint at the end of the second day of competition.
Do you think we're going to see many 200-pound snatches out of the women?
I think you'll see a couple. I mean, I think that a majority of the athletes will be able to push the 85-90% of their 1 rep max, and obviously there's a few women across all the semifinals that can snatch over 220 or so.
Yeah, that'd be great. So moving on to day 3, the final day. How's your body feeling going into the final day right now?
My legs were feeling it, the posterior chain from the run a little bit. I think that the athletes will experience a little bit of that, especially also because I mentioned the ruck with those pistols and the box get overs. I think that'll wear on their posterior a little bit more. But I didn't think it necessarily made too much of an impact on test 6. I was feeling like I felt pretty good coming into that for the skills that I thought I was going to require, which is mostly shoulder stamina and stability. And it was that I think is in a vacuum, that's the hardest test of the weekend. I mean, I think that no matter how good you are at the gymnastic skills, that it's still challenging in this kind of like dense format in the middle of the workout. And the overhead squats are not an accident that they're in that workout. I think the 20 at the beginning, 20 in the handstand push-ups, 20 at the end is intentional. I bet Adrian played around with a few different options there. And settled on that for a reason. It's the last day, so athletes will have to push. They'll know where they stand, they'll know where they want to be and what they have to do and who they need to beat to get there. So don't be surprised if some athletes take a risk there at the end with the row overhead squat once they get there. But also don't be surprised if some athletes kind of come to a pretty screeching halt in the middle on the gymnastics. I mean, especially we're talking about fields of 60. I think you're going to see some people that struggle in that workout just because of the skills it requires.
Looking back after completing all that, do you think that the order of the events is probably makes the most sense?
I think that the order is somewhat intentional in terms of a few things. The way that they build on each other from a physical perspective, yes, but I also know that when you're organizing events like this, the like the time domains matter, the broadcast schedule matters. Maybe however long you've rented the venue for every day. Sometimes there's variables on the logistics side that have an impact on that. I think that Adrian most likely did is, got them in the best order that he could or wanted to, given the parameters that he was forced to work within because of those kind of outside elements.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the workouts? Anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't ask me about the last one.
Oh, I didn't. Well, I figured you quit by then. You're just like, I'm done. So let's yeah. Let's talk about the last one.
And the last workout in particular is a workout that most people could just go to their gym and do. Mm-hmm. It's an echo bike. It's a toes to bar, which is a skill that if you've been doing CrossFit for a few years, you probably have. And it's a sandbag carry, kind of a grunt work thing. So relative to the other semifinal tests, I say it's kind of the lowest barrier to entry. But I was like, if you're just doing that workout, having not done the other ones, how much different is it? And I think that the workout, like the whole totality of the work weekend, caught up to me in that workout a little bit. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that will happen for the elite athletes that are just so much more fit, so much more well prepared, and will have all the tools they need to recover, no other outside distractions. So I do think there's a really good opportunity here to see, I wouldn't say like full send, but some pretty aggressive workouts, especially from people who need it. Whenever the echo bike, like you got to ride the line.
Yeah.
And then and outside of that, I think that, there'll be people that get to that last set of toes to bar and they want to go, and then either the midline or the grip or something just going to kind of force them to slow down. And I think if that happens, especially for athletes that are kind of on the bubble or whatever, then we'll know that this was like right on the verge of what he was looking for in terms of testing the athletes and pushing their limits. But again, intensity is going to be demanded in the last workout of each day, the last test of each day. And that's sometimes just a matter of how much you're willing to hurt. But, as well as anyone, that's part of this sport.
Yeah. I'm already envisioning, even though I don't think he's going to be on the bubble by all means, but I'm just picturing Jason Hopper on that echo bike.
Well, it'll be fun to go him and he'll go right against Roman, and obviously there'll be put up some tough times to beat there.
You mentioned something about, hey, you could do this work at home. We're actually we teamed up with Kiefer Lammy from Underdogs Athletics, and he's actually got an article on B.Friendly Fitness about all the workouts and how he would scale them, and so that way you can do them at home or at your gym. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead to the page, check that out. It's a really cool piece. But now, Brian, final thoughts.
I know a lot of people were asking, so I just kind of I think that of all the tests, personally, I had the most fun doing the ring muscle up one, and I think it was just kind of because it was a new skill for me. Probably the least fun doing Linda for this kind of the opposite reason, just because I'd done it before. I do think that this is a pretty well programmed test if you keep in mind the intent of it, which is to qualify athletes to the CrossFit Games. Given the parameters of what they're trying to do, you go long, you go short, you have some back-to-back, there's some heavy, there's some high skill. Like athletes will have to answer a lot of questions that they should have to answer if they want to compete at the games. And in that regard, having done it myself, I think that most of these athletes are well prepared for this test. But despite that, there's still going to be challenges and sticking points for a majority of them.
Yeah. By the way, nice shirt.
Oh, yeah, you like that?
I like that. But hey, speaking of shirt, let's talk merch. You like the shirts me and Brian are wearing? Well, this part is part of our core collection. It's currently available on our online store, as well as our newest drop of our semi-final collection. Click on a link in our bio to check out. Also, if you want to continuing to see videos like this with Brian's beautiful face, smile, Brian. There he is. And support future projects we have in store for B.Friendly Fitness, consider becoming a Patreon. And on our exclusive Patreon page, that link is also in our bio. And yeah, as always, like, follow, subscribe, and get alerts on all new videos on this channel. And be friendly, our friends.